Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm back. Yay! Yay! The crowd cheers. I'm so happy and excited to be back in this goddamn chair, ready to talk films and TV shows with you guys. Happy New Year to you all. I hope you had an amazing holiday break. I hope it was full of festive cheer, great food, joy and laughter. Those of you who saw my community post will already know that I've been absent because I was planning, getting ready for and going on a huge family holiday back to the motherland. Back to the motherland, okay? Yes, this past December I was in Congo, Kinshasa, and I had a ball of a time. In my community post, I asked you guys if you were interested in seeing some footage from my Congolese adventure, and you guys said that you were. So to my delight, I will be planning, editing, doing something with all of the footage that I took whilst I was on holiday, and hopefully you guys will be able to see that on my channel coming soon. I don't know when, okay? I have a lot catching up to do. There is so much coming out all the time. I am in catch-up mode, as I said in that post. From the second that I landed in this United Kingdom, I have been trying to catch up on everything that's been going on in my absence during my holidays in Kinshasa. So it might take a minute for me to get the Kinshasa vlog ready for you guys. You know, apparently I'm turning into a vlog channel. Like, who can believe it? It's 2025 after all, anything is possible. But that will be coming up soon, and I'll be sure to let you guys know through a community post, but stay tuned for that. But today though, for today, we are going to be doing some of that catching up that I was talking about, because I have in fact been doing my homework still. Even with all of the preparations and the holiday planning, I was still doing my due diligence and watching all of the recent releases that came out in late 2024. Just call me always watching, because I am always stuck to a screen catching up on everything that is coming out. But unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to review most of what I watched in late 2024, and most agonizingly, this is the part that really breaks my heart, okay? Most terribly, I unfortunately missed the opportunity to do the 2024 Genie Awards. Guys, I'm so sorry, okay? The Genie Awards were a tradition that I started in 2022, and we've had 2 good years of them, but unfortunately it's been interrupted because of my holiday to Congo. There's just no way at this point that I can circle back to do the 2024 awards, and I'm so sorry. But to be honest, throughout the entire year, you know, I always keep an eagle eye for potential nominees, and I kept feeling like it was going to be a bit of a tall order. I kept feeling like it was going to be a little bit of a tough task to come up with some really good candidates for the Genie Awards anyways. So I'm not surprised at the end of the day that it didn't work out, because throughout the whole year I was skeptical. Now, to be fair, late 2024 gave us some juicy stuff to work with, which we'll dive into in today's video. But up until the October-November times, I was side-eyeing the whole roster, being like, what am I even going to nominate? Because this is poor. This is a poor showing from Hollywood. Ultimately, we're scrapping the 2024 awards, much to my dismay. But fear not, because even though 2024 may not have a designated Genie Awards on the roster, there is an award show that I do have planned that may or may not be coming up in the near future, so stay tuned for that, because I'm definitely still going to be considering some 2024 candidates for this other awards ceremony that I have in mind. So yeah, let's just say that 2025's awards season is still going to be juicy. We're still going to make it work somehow. Just wait and see. As a final channel reminder, even though I unfortunately won't be giving you guys the 2024 Genie Awards, I am still going to be sticking to the time-honored tradition here on this channel. Yes, the very first video that I ever posted now 6 years ago, wow, which was of course a best of 2018 video. I am still going to be giving you guys my thoughts on the very best things that I checked out in 2024, and that should be coming up probably next week, but I'm knackered and tired and behind, so just bear with me. But it will be coming up soon, sooner than the Congo video, I'll tell you that. And so we will be diving into some of the highlights of 2024 still. But as I did in last year's video, or I guess 2023's video, I am going to be mixing and matching that video. So it's not just going to be focused on movies and TV shows, but also some of the other fun stuff that I got up to, as well as the other mediums of entertainment that I checked out throughout last year. And many of you guys really enjoyed that format. Thank you for your encouragement. There is even more stuff. There is even more stuff to include for 2024's edition, because I was out and about. Like, I was really out here touching grass in 2024. So I fear, like, my biggest fear right now is that there's going to be barely any movies and TV shows, especially movies. And it's mostly going to be made up of other experiences. But we shall see. I'll try and draw up a list and make that video so we can discuss the highlights of last year, as is tradition on this channel. So that's what has been happening. That's what's coming up in the near future. But as for today, we are going to be diving into the 12th edition of what I've been watching. This is a very efficient series where I dive into a whole bunch of releases that I've been checking out behind the scenes, but I haven't had a chance to do dedicated reviews for. It's been a while since I've done what I've been watching, but now we're on the 12th one, and for those of you who don't know, 12 is my favorite number. So this is a very special one, and if you guys want to hear more about what I've been checking out and also give your recommendations for what you think I should watch, especially before doing that best of video, then keep on watching. The first one up that we need to discuss without delay is Squid Game Season 2. Oh yes, I did in fact watch. I did in fact quickly speed through all of season 2 of Squid Game. I watched it dubbed. I watched it in the English language. I tried watching it subbed, but guys, like it was a combination of several things which we'll get into, but I was struggling subbed. So I was like, let's try and dub the situation and see if that works. And I think I watched the first Squid Game dubbed as well, so that just aligns with that. It's easier for me to watch something subbed if it's like a language that I'm familiar with, like if it's French or even a romantic language like Italian, Spanish, then I can hustle, I can get down. But Korean is so far removed from what I know that I need a little help, okay? Don't judge me, please, those of you who watch anime. But in terms of my thoughts on season 2 of Squid Game, this global sensation that blew everyone's minds 3 years back and has now returned after this 3-year delay to continue on this incredible story. I was a little bit disappointed, not gonna lie. Oh, I was a little bit disappointed by season 2 of Squid Game. Oh, it's tough to say. I had hope is the thing. Like, I really did have hope that it was going to be solid. I knew for a fact that Netflix wasn't going to let it flop. Like, it was one of the biggest things that this goddamn platform has ever produced. So I knew that Netflix was going to pump all of their resources, all of their advertising, and allow the creative team to take their time. Like, clearly a lot of love and attention was put into the second season. But it just didn't hit the same as the first. Like, oh, I don't know what to say. But before we dive into too many of the negatives, let's start off with the good. First of all, the concept of this is still so freaking strong. The idea that you have these people in Korea who are down on their luck, they're financially struggling, and they have been made targets to participate in this deadly game because of their unfortunate financial circumstances. It's a really powerful allegory for the issues and struggles that people face in a capitalistic society. But it also has that Lord of the Flies element where you have all of these people coming together in this small confined space that kind of acts as his own world, and the rules suddenly change in there. The rules of civilization, the social contract falls apart, and people are out for themselves. You know, you see the selfishness set in, and people all of a sudden have a messed up view of these extremely violent and despicable actions that they witness within this confined space. So it messes with their head, and you could say there's even a commentary about reality television in there somewhere, but obviously to an extreme that's demonstrated in the Squid Games. But it's just a really, again, powerful metaphor and allegory for capitalism, for surveillance, for the ruling class, kind of using these working class people who are downtrodden financially, as entertainment, as they suffer and literally die and bleed for the ruling class's entertainment. You see that very powerful message come through in every single scene of the Squid Games. So that still remains relevant. That's still incredibly powerful. I will say that the lack of the presence of the ruling class in the second season kind of dimmed that message a little bit, but I said that I would stick to the positives first. So we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, that's all well and good. Secondly, the world of Squid Game is still impeccably produced. I love the set design, the costume design, hair, makeup, everything. You know, the way that they've created this childlike space that completely contrasts against the very real reality of people dying and literally bleeding and suffering for the award money, for a chance to be free from their crippling debt. That kind of dichotomy between the look of the games and the innocent origins of these playground games versus the twisted, dark, violent nature of this display and social experiment is still really effective, and it's done wonderfully when you look at the visuals, set design, all of that good stuff. So in terms of concept and production design, still really strong as well. Then we get into the acting. Everyone is doing the actoring. Everyone is doing the actoring, including the main actor. Everyone on board definitely gave great performances, including the lead actor. And finally, when it comes to the positives, the show is still very entertaining, especially when the games are actually on. It takes a while for us to get there. We'll get to the negatives in a second. But when we're finally in the pit of the Squid Games, that's when the momentum picks up and it starts getting interesting again. For the first game, we have green light, red light, with that little girl doll, that terrifying girl, that makes a comeback. But you see number 456, who has returned to this pit. He starts to guide everyone and warn them, because he's already done this, he's already been there, done that, and has the wounds to prove it. And so he's trying to alert everyone and trying to get them in line, make sure that no one moves, because he knows the consequences are very real and very deadly. So that opening game was really well done. Even though we've seen the game before, we already know what's about to happen, but having this alternate perspective where you have one character who knows what's going down and the others don't was a nice little twist and a nice touch for the second season. But then we move on to some of the other games and we have a different roster, which makes perfect sense. Like, hello, you know, one of the people in the new group has already done all of the games, so why would you do the same games over again? So I think it makes sense that they changed up the games. The only problem is that the games that they decided to go with weren't quite as entertaining. I struggle to say entertaining because obviously, like, oh, they're very icky, it's awful, but they actually, you know, as a viewer of Netflix, they actually weren't as entertaining and like gripping as some of the games that we got in season 1. But still, overall, and when it came to the season, it was at its best when the girls were playing. When the girls were playing, when they were scheming, where they were even in between the games themselves, interacting, happening, when enemies were being made, when friendships were being broken or mended. You know, that was the juicy part. And we were introduced to some characters who had interesting arcs and backgrounds that we could get invested in, especially that pregnant girl and her loser ex-boyfriend who was the YouTuber who gave everyone terrible financial advice. That's like very relevant to the real world as well, which was a nice touch. And then you have that trans woman who was very conflicted about staying in the games versus leaving. That was very interesting. So there was a lot of good stuff there with the new lot of characters that we got. That was all very entertaining whilst we were in the pit of the games. So overall, some good. There was actually some good that I've done a quick run through. But now let's get into the bad. Now let's get into the bad, because like I said, I was disappointed overall with the season. And since this is what I've been watching, I'm going to do a quick run through here. Sorry if it sounds like I'm rushing. That's because I am. First of all, as I hinted at just now, the games themselves weren't spicy. They weren't as gripping as the ones that we got in season 1. So whilst it makes sense that we did get a new lot of games in season 2, apart from the first one, which gave 456 a false sense of security, although not entirely, because he was still suspicious. Good for him. But even though it's understandable that they changed it, I wish they would have changed it to games that were like popping, like the ones from season 1, because that sugar game that we got in season 1 where people were licking that caramel disc, there was nothing else like it. And then in season 1 you had that other game where people were falling to their deaths, and then there was another one where people had to like jump on these glass discs that were barely visible. The first season just had a bunch of games that were so high stakes, literally high stakes, and they just felt so tense and had your butt clenching, whereas this one just felt a little bit softer. We didn't even get the whole roster of games yet, so they will continue, I guess, in season 3. But from what we've seen so far, the games aren't quite as strong as the first lot that we got in season 1. And speaking of what's going to happen in season 3, it turns out that season 2 is a first-parter. There are a lot of shows and movies doing this recently, and like, you know, fine. I guess in a couple of years' time, when we see the second parts to all of these stories, we'll get to determine whether it was worth it or not. But in the meantime, it's like, it's a little bit frustrating. It's a little bit frustrating how like nothing we watch these days is complete. Like everything is a part 1. It was cute when Spider-Verse did it. Like it was cute when Miles Morales was telling half of his story in Across the Spider-Verse and to be continued in Beyond. That's fine. It was even cute when the Avengers did it. Like it was cute when Infinity War was a first parter to Endgame, because originally it was actually going to be called part 1 and part 2. Let's not forget. So that was fine and cute or whatever. But Squid Game? Did Squid Game need to do it? I don't think so. I truly do think they needed to put a little bit more energy into giving us a bombastic second season to make sure that we would even come back for season 3. Because that second season just did not feel like it had enough meat on its bones to justify being a season on its own. And that's even including the few episodes that we got, the 7 episodes versus the 9 or 10 that season 1 had. Even still, it felt too long for the material that we actually got. The first 2 episodes of season 2 were dead. Like, sorry, they were dead. Okay, there were a few highlights, like the rock paper scissors game with those 2 nincompoops, and that sleazy sales guy, that Patrick Bateman type who ended up killing himself. Like that was an intense, crazy scene that was very well acted. But other than that, it just felt like a bunch of bumbling fools and 456 trying to get their back at the ruling class in charge of the games. And then that storyline just dragged and dragged for the whole of the second season. Like they barely made any progress on that storyline. So I was just like, this is a mess. You know, obviously by the end we'll see them do something, I hope. But other than that twist reveal that one of the guys was an inside man, which yeah, duh, that obviously would have happened. Other than that, nothing really happened with the Black Ops team that was sent to discover where the Squid Games are actually happening. So that felt like a bit of a waste of time and a drag of a storyline. And like I said, the only main highlights came from the Squid Games and the interactions in between on the other side. Unfortunately, another negative of season 2 of Squid Game was that the new characters, much like the new games, the new characters just, they just weren't up to par, I'm afraid. Like, we got some really cool, iconic characters in season 1, and they tried to replicate that magic in season 2. Like, we have that wild, crazy lady who's super superstitious and religious and keeps praying and stuff. I guess she's supposed to be a replacement for that other annoying woman from season 1, but she was annoying, but like kind of lovable sometimes. You know, she was different. She was a different flavor of annoying woman, whereas here it's just like she just seems more two-dimensional somehow. It doesn't feel like there's any real depth to the character. It just feels like she's a caricature. And then you have the pregnant girl who, I mean, who wouldn't feel bad for a pregnant girl, right? Like, that's why she's there. So you can see the characters that they slotted in to replace the previous characters that we got in season 1, but none of them really shone a light to the season 1 characters that we lost. So that was also a downer. But in terms of my personal thoughts, especially going forward, I am of course going to be checking out season 3 of the show. I'm still really excited to see how this story wraps up. But in terms of season 2, I just don't think it would stand on its own, particularly on a rewatch. Like, I can rewatch season 1 of Squid Game, no problem, but I can see myself skipping through a lot of season 2. Okay, so I've just spent about 20 minutes talking about Squid Game. I should have just done a dedicated review. No, let's move on to some other shows that I have been checking out. This next bunch is kind of a part of a subgenre that is basically what British crime thriller. Like, there have been a ton of these coming out this past year. Every single week there is a British crime drama thriller situation being released on a streaming platform or even a traditional network like BBC. And it turns out that I quite enjoy them. Some examples of shows within this genre that I was checking out throughout 2024 include Criminal Record, which came out in early 2024 from Apple TV+. We also got Ludwig from BBC. We got Disclaimer from Apple TV+. We got Day of the Jackal more recently, and also Black Doves coming out of Netflix. So like, this is the kind of show that I'm talking about. I'm just gonna bunch them all together and say that overall I've had a pretty good time with all of these British crime thriller dramas, sometimes even comedies. I think they're a great way to pass the time. They tend to have a certain kind of standard of quality where it's rare that they really disappoint. Like, it's rare that they're awful. Most of the time they are decent, pretty good, or passable to really great. And I would say the great ones would definitely be like Day of the Jackal and Black Doves. Like, that was really, really solid. But the rest of these were also pretty good as I was checking them out. I also really liked Ludwig, looking forward to the second season of that. My least favorite of the bunch, I would say, was Disclaimer, which starred Sacha Baron Cohen and Cate Blanchett. That was just boring. That was just boring as hell. I kept waiting for the story to have more, and it kind of did have more, but like, it felt like it could have been 3 episodes max, really. Like, it felt like it could have been 3 episodes. It's one of those where none of the characters are likable, and it's really tough to get through the story. It's kind of all over the place. Like, I just really did not like Disclaimer, and I've seen that it's been nominated for Golden Globes, which, by the way, heartbroken that I missed the Golden Globe nominations. Truly heartbroken. Anyway, I'm surprised, although I shouldn't be surprised, to see that it's gotten so many nominations, because I really just could not stand that show and I couldn't wait to be rid of it. Although I did watch it until the end, so I guess that's saying something. But yeah, one of my least favorites of this little genre, but the others were actually quite enjoyable and, like I said, a great way to pass the time and have on in the background. But the only reason why I wouldn't say that they're like my favorites is because they tend to just be very formulaic. Like once you've seen a couple, you've seen them all, and very few of them have like a special spice that makes them stand out. I would say with Black Doves, at least you had Keira Knightley. At least you had Keira Knightley being a badass. You had Sarah Lancaster. Oh my goodness, it was great to see her, especially from her great role as Julia over on HBO. And then you also had Ben Whishaw, who is a national treasure. So like the cast is what really made Black Doves in that case. But the story itself was meh, it was whatever. Similarly with Day of the Jackal, the cast is what really makes that series. You do have a few more twists and turns and a bit more intrigue in that show's story, which made it more compelling than Black Doves. But still, it's like you've got the stereotypical MI6 agent who's really dedicated to her role, and she really wants to find this assassin, and her home life is suffering for it, and blah blah blah. Like we've seen this before. Lashana Lynch is playing the sort of character that was parodied in Agatha all along. So yeah, once you've seen a few of these, you've seen them all. But I would say in the case of like Black Doves and Day of the Jackal, it is worth watching at the very least for the performances, especially in the case of Day of the Jackal, where Eddie Redmayne and Lashana Lynch are really good. So yes, overall when it comes to this genre, it was very strong in 2024, delivering some good solid hits, but overall nothing that really blew my mind spectacularly, but I did have a good time, to be fair. Okay, so next up we're refocusing back on a single series to talk about Arcane. Oh, Arcane season 2. Now, unlike Squid Game, which I eventually covered in, I think, one of the first What I've Been Watching videos on this channel, I never covered the sensation, the global hits that was Arcane on this channel because I watched it far too late. I literally watched Arcane about a year after the show came out, so I was very late in the game. But I was so excited, so excited for the second season because I think that Arcane is one of the best shows ever made, actually. It's literally one of the best shows ever made, actually. At the very least, one of the best animated series ever made. Like, please. I'm not saying anything radical here. So season 1 of Arcane was almost perfect, apart from Jinx being super annoying by the end. But I guess, you know, that is her character. That's what she's meant to do, but it was so grating. Anyways, it was almost perfect. So I was really looking forward to season 2. And funnily enough, I think season 2 of Arcane suffered from a few of the same issues that season 2 of Squid Game did. A few of them though. But it came out far more on top than season 2 of Squid Game. They are in two different camps because season 2 of Arcane is the last season of the show, which is heartbreaking. Although I do hope that they continue on with the League of Legends cinematic universe, because clearly the animators are cooking. They're cooking some sauce, they're cooking some spice over there, or whatever that substance is in that world. I've forgotten now. But yeah, we need to see more of that world for sure, even if this particular story is over. But I would say we'll start with the negatives of season 2 of Arcane before going into the positives, because there's more of them. I would say the negative is that it did start off a little bit slow. Like it, you know, they were building up the pace, and obviously those of us who watched season 1 and we saw how bombastic and crazy and amazing it was just from the jump, we were like, okay, so like, when are we gonna not to mention it's been such a long wait. Okay, we've been parched, or we've been starving, and so we were just like, oh, let's get into it. And they did make us wait. They did make us wait for the juice and the sauce to come. And so the first few episodes of season 2 were a little bit slow. And then we got to the good, especially in the second half of season 2. Bruh. There were some episodes in there that, I mean, I've said this often and I need to make a video about this. There were some episodes in there that literally qualified for like perfect episodes. Like the label of a perfect episode. Where literally from start to finish, it's just immaculate. The second half of season 2 of Arcane absolutely delivered. Now, conceptually, did I understand everything that was going on screen? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was a very inside baseball to me. This time around, there were certain things that kind of just went over my head, but I was in it for the ride. I was still having the time of my life, going through this world, discovering all of these different concepts and ideas, but most of all, having a blast watching this visual mastery in animation, because it's just one of the most beautifully animated shows ever made. And so even if they're talking gobbledygook, even if I don't understand what's going on, or either way, I'm still going to be blown away by these animated sequences. So yeah, it was a little bit more inside baseball. And yeah, every time I stopped paying attention for even a second, I was completely lost for some of these storylines. But I still had the time of my life with season 2 of Arcane. I thought when it really picked up steam in the second half, it was just off and away. And obviously one of the best animated projects that we got in 2024, like easily, without question, it would be nominated for a Genie Award. And I am sorry to see the Jinx and Vi story come to an end. There were some really sad moments, especially when the baby girl, when the baby girl died. I had to pause the video. I was like, pause. And I had to take a walk. And I literally, mind you, I watched this before going on holiday, but I had to take a walk, and I was like ducking all of the suitcases that were around in my room. Like, I just need to walk right now. Get out of my way. Because when that baby girl died, when Jinx's daughter died, I was literally like, I can't with this anymore. Like, I can't do this right now. And then there were so many times where Vi made me cry. Just everything was just making me cry. And that is the best part of this series, really, apart from the incredible animation and soundtrack. And opening sequence. Okay, there's a lot of great parts about this. But one of the best parts about this series is the characters. Damn. Like, the characters are so brilliant, even when they're annoying, even when they're doing stuff that's grating on your nerves. Jinx. They're so brilliant. And Vi is just so amazing. That's what really gets you invested in these stories, even when they get convoluted and complicated and very inside baseball to the world of League of Legends. The characters still ground the story and make you invested and make this whole thing a magical experience to behold. So if they're able to capture that again in another League of Legends project, then I will be there. I will be there in a heartbeat, because I really did fall in love with this world. Okay, so now that we've talked about a few of the TV shows that I've been checking out in recent times, it's time to move on to some movies. Yes, the movies. This is Jean's movie chats after all, and we're gonna start off with one that was a little bit disappointed by, even though everyone else seems to have adored this film. So let's get into the controversy. I'm going to be talking about Anora. Yes, Anora. I did check it out like a couple of months back. It's been a while at this point. And I thought it was good. Like, I thought it was decent. I thought it was, actually, no, I did think it was, it was good. It was solid. It's just, it wasn't as like mind-blowingly great as everyone made it out to be. Now, I will say, going into Anora, I'd heard the pitch that it was supposed to be a Pretty Woman, but if it was realistic, like if Richard Gere's character was like a criminal or was involved in criminal enterprises, like what would really happen in that scenario. So that's the pitch that I'd heard going in, and so I was surprised when I discovered that the film was a lot more comedic. It it's a lot more light-hearted. There are some of those like grey areas and there is some darkness in there, but overall it's like not the same tone that I imagined. But that's not the film's fault. I'm not going to put that on the film, but just kind of adjusting my expectations for what I thought Anora was going to be did take me a little bit of a moment. But then once I accepted that and saw the film for what it was, I'd still say that it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite. Now I will say, first half of Anora, oh, I was having a ball, actually. I was having the time of my life. I thought it was really well paced. I was buying into this kind of sudden, crude, poorly thought out love story between the two main characters. You have the character of Annie, who is this young sex worker from Brooklyn, and she meets and falls in love and gets married to this young guy called Ivan, who is incredibly immature, and he's just the worst. Like, he's just a grown-up baby child who has no responsibilities and is very fortunate to come from a very wealthy family of people who have influence. Like, it's not really made clear what his family does, but they obviously have a lot of influence and power in Russia, and so they're not to be messed with. And this guy is just, yeah, he's just a child. He's a literal child who gets up to very adult things, but like that doesn't make him an adult whatsoever. He doesn't know anything about responsibility, anything about taking ownership of his decisions. Yeah, just a literal baby child, like literally the worst kind of guy that you can imagine. And unfortunately, Annie falls in love with him and she gets married to him, and she's very naive in this whole process, which is crazy because earlier on in the film she does have her guard up. She is a New Yorker, and so she doesn't trust easily at the beginning, but he kind of wears her down, and then they do get married and she thinks it's for real, but it's quickly shown that it very much isn't. And unfortunately the dream is broken when Ivan's family sends over this like entourage of guys to kind of break apart this marriage, you know, dissolve it quickly. They want the marriage to disappear because it's a huge mistake in their eyes and a huge embarrassment for Ivan's parents because their son has married a sex worker. Like, it just cannot stand, especially in Russian society. So the second half of the film becomes about this entourage, these two men who have been sent by Ivan's parents trying to find Ivan and get Annie to dissolve their marriage so that this huge scandal can be gotten rid of as soon as possible. And that's where the comedic aspects come to play, because sometimes they are bumbling fools. Like, sometimes these guys are just bumbling fools who have no idea what's going on, no idea how to do anything. And so even though initially you think they're really scary mobsters who are going to get the job done and threaten her life and everything, you come to find out that they're just these two guys who have this job to do. And one of them was at his, I think it was his son or his nephew's baptism, and he had to leave early. Like, and he was just talking to Ivan's dad like, yeah, I'll get this sorted, I'll get this done. And his whole family's looking at him like, bro, really? You're about to leave right now? Seriously? And so he has to like pat the sweat off of his head and run off and go all the way to the States so that he can sort this out, because this grown-up baby child doesn't know how to behave himself. That's the energy that the second half of the film brings. And there are times where I really laughed out loud. I found it absolutely hilarious. But there were also a lot of times where I was like, you're kind of losing me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. You're kind of losing me. It just felt like the point, the raison d'etre of the film kind of wavered a lot in the second half versus the first. The first was punchy, it was making a strong point, it was putting us through this whirlwind of a romance that felt to me like a sham from the beginning, but Annie was into it, so I loved that for her. Whereas in the second half, even though some of the comedic beats really did work for me and it was really funny in parts, there was a lot in between that just kind of felt like it was wavering and just vibing. and felt a little bit repetitive as they were going to each of these different places trying to look for Ivan. And so, yeah, I didn't love this film as much as so many others did, but that's perfectly fine because I've had many a controversial view in 2024, so why should this be any different? Though I will say a definite highlight of this film was the performances. I think Mikey Madsen was really strong here, and I can see why she's getting so much awards recognition for her work here. But my favorite performance was definitely from Yuri Borisov, who portrayed Igor. I thought he was so adorable. It's weird because, again, his character exists in a gray area where he kind of was a bad guy, really, technically, but he was also just an adorable little teddy bear. Like he's been hired to do a job, and he kind of felt bad for Annie. He kind of wanted to help her out, but she was so distrusting of him, which is understandable, that she didn't really let him help out. And so, yeah, there was an interesting and bizarre dynamic there, but overall, I did just find the character adorable. I do think that Yuri did a great job there, and I'm so glad that he's getting the awards recognition that he deserves as well, because that was a solid performance. Although, having said all of that, I absolutely detested the ending of this film. I hated the ending of this movie. I understand what they were going for, the vulnerability in her having sex with him, but then she's breaking down, you know, she's not able to put up that persona anymore. She tried to act so strong throughout the entire proceedings, but at the end of the day, she's a heartbroken child who just wanted to be seen and wanted to be heard and loved, and she lost all of that. I understand what they were going for with that little scene, but I still hated it. I still absolutely hated it. I was rooting for them to get together ultimately, but she shut him down so many times that by the end I was like, I just want him to have a happily ever after elsewhere. But then when that scene happened, I was like, this is literally the worst case scenario of what I could have imagined. So yeah, absolutely hated that ending. Even though I understand what they were going for, I still didn't like it. Ooh. Okay, so next movie up is one that was highly anticipated by me. The second that I watched the trailer for this film, I was like, oh, I will be there. I will be there as soon as possible. And it did take me a while to watch it because I was so busy during this time, but I finally did get a chance to watch it, and I was delighted. I was absolutely delighted by what I saw. This next one up is Conclave. Conclave delivered. I don't know what to tell you. Conclave is exceptional. Oh, what a solid, what a solid drama. This is the religious drama that stars Ralph Fiennes, and it's all about the conclave. This is the process that takes place when the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, dies. The cardinals that reside in Vatican City and those that come from all around the world to do this have to decide upon a new Pope, and so they have to do this whole voting system. I'm talking like I know this from like research or experience, but everything that I'm telling you is coming from what I watched in the film, what I gathered from watching this movie. But they have this voting system where they need to have a certain number of votes before they can decide upon the new Pope. And then you have that well-known tradition where at the end of each voting round, you have the smoke that comes out of the chimney. And if the smoke is black, I think it is. If the smoke is black or grey, then it means that the decision hasn't been made. But if the smoke is white or light grey, a decision has been made, or it could be the other way around. Either way, there's something about smoke and chimneys. Listen, I did grow up in the Catholic Church and I did go to Catholic schools, but I can't remember at the moment. Please don't sue me. But this film does showcase that tradition alongside the entire process of the conclave, which in this case is being headed up and organised by Ralph Fiennes' Cardinal Lawrence. There are all sorts of twists and turns throughout this film, and you have some really strong personalities personalities here in the Cardinals. Particularly, you have John Lithgow and Stanley Tucci's character, as well as Lucien Mismati's character, who's supposed to represent an African cardinal. Then you also have some female representation in this very high class of the Catholic Church, shown by Isabella Rossellini's Sister Agnes character. This, alongside a couple of other characters, make for a very interesting group of characters to follow along as we go through this conclave journey. There are ups, there are downs, twists and turns. As I said, I had the time of my life with Conclave. I thought it was, I mean, spoiler alert, one of the best films of 2024. Just a solid, good drama with excellent performances here, there, everywhere. Now, if I did have any critiques of Conclave, it would be that the final act, it wasn't quite perfect. The final act had a near perfect landing. Now, there was a twist, not the big twist. I'm not talking about the big twist, which is, okay, that was fine. But there was another twist that happened, which I saw coming from a mile away. Like, as soon as the character was introduced, I was like, oh, this is exactly what's going to happen. There's another twist afterwards, which I didn't see coming. No one would have seen that coming, unless, no one would have seen that coming. It's crazy. But that other twist that I did see coming, I thought that landed pretty abruptly. Like, I thought there would be a little bit more of a transition, but it's so hard to talk about without revealing it. But I thought there would be a little bit more of a transition to when people changed their minds about this character. But instead, there was this big speech moment, and then everyone was like, oh yeah, let's go with this character. And I thought that was a little bit abrupt. I don't want to reveal too much, but that was the only downside that I could think of when it came to the film. Like, if we just had a bit more of a gentle turn towards this character, then it would have been perfect. And then you have that final twist, which I think really worked for me personally. Some people might disagree, but I was like, there was foreshadowing throughout the film. I can't reveal too much. Oh, there was foreshadowing that made that final twist make sense. So overall, it was near perfect, honestly. And finally, the last film that I'm going to be diving into for today's What I've Been Watching is Better Man. Yes, this is the most, oh actually no it isn't. I've been to the cinema a few times this week, but this is the second most recent film that I watched in the cinema after landing back in the United Kingdom. And guys, this is yet another film that I was highly anticipating, especially after watching the trailer. I saw that trailer and I was like, Monkey Man 2? That sequel came out quickly. I'm joking. But I saw the trailer. I saw Robbie Williams portraying himself as a monkey, and I was like, oh, I will definitely be there. It looked really strong, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised because this film, as it turns out, is directed by the director of The Greatest Showman. If I'd known this going in, then the greatness of this film wouldn't be as much of a surprise, but I didn't know. And guys, I loved it. I absolutely loved Better Man. You need to watch Better Man, actually. Oh, in the roster of musical biopics that we have gotten in recent years, I mean, hell, 2024 had several. We had one about Bob Marley, one about Amy Winehouse, and now Robbie Williams. But in the roster that we have gotten so far, I think this is one of the best musical biopics that has come out in recent years. Guys, I loved Better Man. You need to watch Better Man. Now, I know that the majority of my audience is American, and I know that Robbie Williams didn't have as much of an impact over in the States, but like, just put that to the side for a second. You have all of the information that you need in the film, so you can still watch it and enjoy it, even if you don't really relate to the Take That phenomenon and the Robbie Williams phenomenon of the 90s and the early 2000s. Hell, I was barely alive for that time. I wasn't really around for Take That, really, so I didn't really know much about them, but I was kind of starting to gain consciousness when Robbie Williams was a big thing here in the UK, and that's enough for me to just be fully invested. Like, I'm actually a fan. I've always been a Robbie Williams fan, actually, which sounds like really unexpected coming from me, but his songs back in the day, hit. Like, he had several hit after hit after hit, I cannot lie. And so he is a constant in my best of 2000s playlist on Spotify. So yeah, I was actually a fan, even though I wasn't really exposed to the highs of his career. So I was primed to enjoy this film. But even if you barely know who he was, please give this film a chance. Because I'm telling you, it's actually so excellent. It's actually so excellent. And it's never too late to discover Robbie Williams' music. Like, come on, guys, just give it a chance, okay? But let's rewind a little bit. So Better Man is this crazy, wild musical biopic all about Robbie Williams' rise and fall. And what makes this weird and wacky is that he is presented as this monkey. Oh, like it's another Planet of the Apes movie. We already got one of those early 2024, but here comes another one. Yeah, you can make all of the Monkey Man, Planet of the Apes jokes about this one. Like 3 monkey related films in 1 year. It's crazy. But here you have Robbie Williams himself being portrayed by a CGI monkey, and it sounds crazy, it sounds weird, and I was, you know, shocked and surprised when I saw the trailer and very confused. But just like in the trailer where I started to realize that there was something special here, that absolutely ended up being the case for the film overall, because some way, somehow, the monkey worked. Like, the monkey absolutely worked. I absolutely bought that it was Robbie Williams. I mean, first of all, the CGI for the monkey was excellent, and this is something that it's so hard to do. I mean, Planet of the Apes has already shown us how great you know, technology can be when rendering monkeys and apes and having them be main characters. But to have it in this musical biopic, like, this isn't a huge, you know, 4-quadrant blockbuster like Planet of the Apes. Having this kind of technology, CGI, be dedicated to a musical biopic, especially one about Robbie Williams, who isn't a huge American star, is pretty spectacular. But it absolutely worked to the point where I was convinced that he was Robbie Williams. Like, he absolutely worked as a character. It certainly helps that he was voiced by Robbie Williams himself and the whole film is narrated by him. But yeah, this huge experiment was a success in my eyes, because I found it to be a really compelling and refreshing take on a musical biopic. What an excellent way to depict the main star. But it's not just a wacky experiment that they did to be different. It is thematically relevant because it speaks to how Robbie Williams saw himself, especially in this stage in his life. And that's not just some pretentious thing that he made up for this movie. You can go back and listen to his songs and his discography, and he mentions several times the idea of a monkey man, the idea of him being a monkey. It's part of his lore, I guess. Like, it's part of his story, which has been shown through his songs and now through this movie as well. So it's thematically relevant, and it's also realized spectacularly using CGI. And then there are various sequences and moments where they really use that monkey metaphor to its full effect, and it is so freaking powerful. I'm not going to spoil anything because I know most of you haven't seen this film and you really need to, okay? Please give it a go. But there are sequences that are genuinely terrifying that, to me, harkened back to Jordan Peele's Nope. If you know, you know. Oh, but you know the scary monkey sequences or ape sequences that we got in Nope. Yeah, we got. There are trails of that, interestingly enough, in Better Man, but it's more to do with Robbie Williams' psyche, his feelings of insecurity, the fact that he never really believed in himself and he struggled with his sense of self, and also just overall, like the major flashing sign that we have here is imposter syndrome. Like, dead ass, just imposter syndrome. The movie, the guy struggling with believing in his talent, believing in, actually being deserving of having the fan base and the popularity and success that he got, believing that he was even attractive. Like, all of that was just imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome. And it didn't come out of nowhere. It came from how he was raised, particularly the relationship that he had with his father, which was very complicated. You know, he was a showbiz man that never made it, and never gave his son the attention that he needed and deserved. And so Robbie Williams grew up with this like complex all his life, and all of this was exacerbated and made far worse when he became super famous, super young, and fell into drug and alcohol abuse, which just led to a whole lot of paranoia and depression and anxiety. And all of that is conveyed really cleverly, really powerfully through these sequences that are centered on these monkey-like depictions of Robbie Williams. But we don't just have scary, terrifying sequences or psychosis in this film. We also have incredible musical sequences that really showcase some of Robbie Williams's greatest hits here. In particular, I really loved Feel is one of my favorite Robbie Williams songs anyways. Like, literally, it's always been one of my favorites, okay? And when I heard the piano notes start, I was like, oh, this is about to be a killer. And I was right, because Feel comes on early on in the film, where Robbie Williams is still a child. He's still Robert, and he's talking about how his father left him. He left this whole family to pursue this, you know, wild, successful career as a comedian and a show person that never even materialized. And so you have the sequence of a young baby monkey, Robert Williams, singing Feel, that is just gut-wrenching, guys. Like, it's, oh my god. Yeah, so I love Feel, and I love that sequence. So yeah, like, we have gotten a whole bunch of musical biopics in recent years, so much so that earlier this year, in preparation for the Amy Winehouse one, I was doing my homework and watching a whole bunch of them in preparation for a tier list video. Unfortunately, I didn't end up doing a single tier list video for 2024. Hopefully that will change for 2025, especially because there's a Michael Jackson biopic coming out this year. So I'm hoping that that homework that I did in 2024 will come in handy for a musical biopic tier list for the release of the Michael Jackson one at the very least. And if my opinion of Better Man stays for that point, I predict it will rank very high on that tier list, because I thought this was one of the most powerful, refreshing, engaging, exciting musical biopics that we have gotten in recent years. I would highly recommend it. It's still in cinemas. Please give it a chance, even if you've never heard of Robbie Williams in your life. I can almost guarantee you'll have the time of your life. So that's it from me, guys. That is a somehow rushed yet still very, very long rundown of some of the things that I've been checking out in recent months to catch up on all of the 2024 releases. But now it's your turn to let me know what you have been watching and what you recommend down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch you videos coming up. I have many planned, and hopefully I'll get a wait. Please be sure to subscribe to catch you videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's great to be back. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.